Hi, we're out on the ranch today, so please bear with gunfire you hear in the background. And today I have two handguns with me, a Colt Government Model and a Rock Island Armory 1911A1. Both are caliber 45 ACP, and they are similar handguns, but there are some differences as well. One of the most noteworthy differences is, depending on where you buy it, the Rock Island can have a price tag that's $500, $600, $700 less than the Colt. But the question is, with a price that's that much less, how much less gun are you getting? Let's shoot the two side by side and see what we can learn about that. The first thing I want to discuss is accuracy. I'll go back 15 yards and shoot the target on your left with the Rock Island, the target on your right with the Colt, and we'll see how the groups compare. Well, if there's any difference between the two, it's not much. Something I noticed immediately was that the Colt has a significantly better trigger pull than the Rock Island does, which didn't make a lot of difference in deliberate slow fire, but what difference will it make when I'm trying to shoot fast? Well, I'll shoot our zombie Bigfoot targets from 10 yards and see what kind of results we get. This time I'll start with the Colt, and I'll shoot left, right, shooting as fast as I think I can hit, and we'll add a magazine change to the equation. Let's take a look at the targets. And there's the results. Now I'll put up two new zombie Bigfoot targets, and we'll try this drill with the Rock Island. And now the Rock Island. Let's take a look at the target. And again, if there's any difference, it isn't much. You saw me do the magazine change with both of these pistols, but I want to show you a close-up of the magazine that the Rock Island uses. Now here's your typical 7-shot 1911-45 magazine. These days when you buy a 1911-45, it will typically come with an 8-shot magazine. Mine came with 7s. And when you put the magazine in the mag well, it's flush with the bottom of the grip. You have to make sure you press on it just right to get it seated. The Rock Island's magazine has a foot on the bottom of it, so when you put it in the mag well, it sticks out just a little bit, making it easier to seat. And it is an 8-shot magazine. Now when you put the two side by side, you can see that they're similar, but the Rock Island is definitely different. And that brings up a question. And the question is, will the Rock Island operate with your typical Colt 7-shot magazine? Well, here's two genuine Colt 7-shot magazines. Let's put that to the test. Now, typically, I don't like to run the pistol completely empty, but today, for demonstration purposes, I will, to ensure that the slide will lock back after the last shot. And for demonstration purposes only, So, will the Rock Island Armory pistol operate with the Colt magazines? It would appear the answer is yes. Now, will the Colt pistol operate with the Rock Island magazine? and for demonstration purposes only. So again, it would appear the answer is yes. So far, our Rock Island is stacking up pretty well against our Colt, but there's a few more things I want to discuss. First, I'm not going to demonstrate disassembly and reassembly. It's very basic and virtually identical for both of them. However, there are a couple of differences in the way these firearms are put together that I do want to discuss. Now, I've mentioned that when you load the Colt 1911, you put in a magazine, pull the slide to the rear, let it go. Another way to load this is lock the slide to the rear, then put in the magazine, hit the slide release, chambering around. And I've said on a few occasions that when you do either of those methods, there's a chance, albeit a slight one, that the gun could go off due to inertia. Now, what I'm talking about is, when this hammer is down, it's resting on the firing pin, but it is not pushing the firing pin completely to the point where it's touching the primer. The firing pin has a spring, and when the hammer hits it, just through inertia, it bounces that firing pin forward, hitting the primer, and then the spring pushes it back. And so there's a chance, albeit a small one, that as that slide goes forward, you could get enough inertia to set that round off. When I say that, people tell me how wrong I am and that that can't happen. I'm sure there's people typing already. Well, when people tell me that it can't happen, they're half right. And as I've said before, there's a thing about mathematics in that when you're 50% right, you're 100% wrong. The thing is, 1911 platforms are made by many different companies. On newer Colts, and a few others, there's a block in here preventing that firing pin from going forward unless the trigger is pulled. If I cock this hammer and the thumb safety is disengaged, and I've engaged the grip safety, if I take this pen and I try to push that firing pin forward, it won't go. But if I pull the trigger, now it will. There's a block in there, and that will protect newer Colts and a few others from going off by slam firing in the way I described. That system is not in this Rock Island. If I cock this hammer and I push that forward, that firing pin goes forward whether I'm pulling the trigger or not. So the idea that it can't slam fire, there are internal systems keeping it from doing that on newer Colts and some of the others. On a lot of the older guns and some of the newer guns you can buy, that system is not in place. That doesn't mean that this gun is bad or wrong or defective. It means that when you put your magazine in and chamber around, there's a chance, albeit a slight one, that it could go off. And you have to be aware of that and make sure it's in a safe direction when you chamber around. Maybe get a clearing barrel in your house, and you've got to be aware of that. Now, another difference between these two guns is the way the grip safety works. Not all, but most 1911 platforms have a grip safety. Cock the hammer, ensure that the thumb safety is disengaged, pull the trigger. It won't go off unless the grip safety is engaged. The idea being that you have to have an actual grip on your firearm to set it off. Some people think a grip safety is a good idea. Some people think it's a terrible idea. For those who think it's a bad idea, they have many reasons, and I'm going to discuss two of them. The first being that they consider it just unnecessary. The second being the concern that as you bring that pistol out of your holster and you need to get a shot off quick, there's a chance you might not have the perfect grip and your gun might not go off when you need it to. Is that a valid concern? I've seen a lot of people have that problem. For me, in the tens of thousands of rounds I've put through 1911 platforms that were made by Colt or Springfield Armory, in the many thousands of times that I've brought the pistol out of the holster and pulled the trigger, I have failed to engage the grip safety 3 times. I don't consider it a big problem. However, with the Rock Island, in the short time that I've had this, in the 300 plus rounds I've put through it, I have failed to engage that grip safety 3 times. That concern seems to be legitimate with this model. And it's just because it doesn't quite stick out the way the one on the Colt does. Now on other Rock Island models like this one, there's some extra dimension added to that grip safety, so it becomes very easy to push in, and it seems to correct that problem. This one, it's a concern. Now there's one other thing I want to discuss that's a major difference between these two pistols. This is an earplug case where earplugs with every shot I take. However, right now I've got earplugs and earphones. Something people discuss is that 1911 platform handguns are intended to shoot just round-nose full metal jacket ammo, just ball ammo, and the question is, how reliable will the Rock Island be if I try to shoot other types of ammunition through it? Well, I've got my Rock Island pistol, I have several magazines, and they're loaded with Hornady Critical Defense FTX projectile like a ballistic tip. There's also some Hornady American Gunner hollow point ammunition and some Federal HST hollow point ammunition. Let's see if it'll shoot them. And the answer would appear to be no. That is the first malfunction I've had with this pistol. Let's see how we do. And again, the answer would appear to be no. So there's at least some types of ammunition it seems this gun doesn't like. Now that wasn't a malfunction, I just let that go back intentionally. Doing okay so far. And for instructional purposes only. So, does this pistol function with hollow points? It would appear yes, if you have the right ones. So you've got to make sure that you select your ammo wisely. Now there's one more very important difference between these two handguns that I have to discuss, and I'll start by telling you a couple of anecdotes. AR-15 is a registered trademark of the Colt Corporation, at least it was last time I looked, but we use terms like AR and AR platform and AR-15 generically to describe a certain type of rifle, much in the same way that people will say Kleenex to describe all facial tissue. Okay, one day I was at the range shooting an AR platform rifle. There's almost no one there, but there's a couple of people over here, and you can tell one is the far more experienced than the other, and he's showing his pal the ropes. And he decided that he was going to get the better of me. And so he thought he would catch me saying that it's an AR when it really isn't. And so we had this conversation. Is that an AR? Yes. So it's a Colt then? Yeah. You should have seen the look on his face. He looked as though I'd told him I dated his mother. Now, let me tell you another anecdote. I was on a different range, firing a Colt Government Model identical to this one, except it was 38 Super, as where this is a 45. And somebody showed up with a really duded up, nice 1911 platform pistol, and he was not trying to be the same kind of guy the first one was. And of course, he couldn't see that it's a 38. He just assumed all 1911s were 45s. And we had this conversation. Who made your 45? Colt. And it's a 38 Super. Oh. When you say the word Colt, all trash talking ceases. Now, is it really worth paying the extra $500, $600, $700 for this pistol? That's up to you. But when it comes down to how this Rock Island is really performing, I found that it's very accurate. We have over 300 rounds through it, and except for finding out that there's at least one type of hollow point it doesn't like, it's functioned very reliably. I can't speak to the longevity of it because I haven't had it that long, but so far I've been very impressed with it. Sometimes people ask me for recommendations in terms of what would be a good quality handgun at a low price. Well, if I had a top 10 list of best handguns for the buck, this would be on it. So as always, don't try this at home on what you call a professional, and thanks for watching the Rock Island Armory 1911 video.